You want to give everything to your learners. That's the whole point. You have knowledge, you have experience, you have transformation to offer. And the most generous thing you can imagine is handing all of it over. But when you give all of it at once, it is not a river. It is crashing waves. There is no direction, no channel, no path, just a wall of water hitting someone who came to you to learn. Backwards design was the turning point for me. It was the framework that finally gave me a channel. And then, because no framework fits every situation perfectly, it led me to build something of my own. Today, I want to tell you that story. Welcome back to Learning Experience Design for Changemakers. I'm Renee Koster, Learning Experience Designer and Strategist. Last week, we defined what a learning experience actually is, a moment someone learned something that was designed with intention instead of just left to chance. This week, we're moving from that theory into the methodology that makes it real. This is the approach that changed how I design. And by the end of this episode, you'll understand exactly how it became my own framework, Roots to Canopy. Let me paint the picture a little more. When a generous, heart-led educator, whether they're a coach, nonprofit director, workshop facilitator, sits down to design a learning experience, the instinct is almost always the same. What do I know about this topic? What should I include? And then they start writing all of it. Every story, every framework, every caveat, every resource. I have watched people build courses the way you might pack for a trip when you cannot decide what you will need. You just put it all in the bag just in case. And the result is a student who is overwhelmed before they have even started. They came in curious and they leave exhausted. The crashing waves are not a problem of effort. They are a problem of direction. You can have all the right content and still not have a learning experience because content without structure is just information. And information without a path is not transformation, it's noise. And that is the problem I kept running into in different forms across every context I worked in. And it is the problem that backwards design cracked open for me. A little bit of a story. When I started my graduate certificate in learning experience design, one of the first things we were assigned was Understanding by Design by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTeague. I want to be upfront about something here because I think it matters for what I'm about to say. My instructors presented this framework as fully adaptable to adult education, and it absolutely is. We applied it to a mix of projects, some designed for children, some for adults. The methodology itself was developed for K-12 context, but it can do so much more. I remember sitting with it and feeling something shift because underneath the application layer, there was a core principle that I recognized immediately. You do not start with what you want to teach. You start with what you want the learner to be able to do, understand, or become, and then you work backwards from there. Reading the book got me so excited. I knew that this was the path that I wanted to go down. The idea that you start with the end and then design toward it was eye-opening. Looking back, I think I'd been doing different versions of this in every job I ever had without knowing what to call it. As an anthropology instructor, as a student advisor, someone who designed curriculum for first-year college students, I was always asking, what do I actually want them to walk away with at the end of this? And then what does it require? The book gave me language for something I already believed in, and that absolutely lit me up. And here's the part of the story I do not always lead with, but I think is the most useful part. I finished the program. I launched my business. I started working with clients, coaches, consultants, nonprofit educators, people who had courses, memberships, and they wanted to improve. And I also started working on designing my own courses. And I went right back into the content first approach without even realizing it. I would sit down to design my own courses and ask myself, what are you teaching? What topics do you want to cover? What modules do you have? I was doing exactly what I had just learned not to do, starting with the content and building around it. It was not conscious, it was habit. It was the way every client framed the conversation, and I slid right into their frame without stopping to reorient. And this is what happened. I got stuck. Building my own courses, I got stuck and my courses got delayed time and time again because I couldn't see my way out of it. And if I couldn't see my way out, any student taking it certainly wasn't going to either. And I think about this a lot when I work with clients now because this is exactly what has happened to them. They sit down to design, pull toward the pull toward the content and giving is so strong, so familiar, so immediately actionable that the framework, the idea of transformation first goes out the window. So, knowing a principle and having it needs to become muscle memory. And those are two completely different things. That gap is real and it's not a character flaw. It is just what learning actually looks like. And the shift that closed the gap for me came from an unexpected place. I downloaded a freebie from a summit I attended, one of those opt-in resources, and this one actually delivers something extremely useful. I don't remember exactly what it was about, but it asked a series of questions that were structured in a way that made me stop and think about that sequence of designing differently. What comes first? What has to be true before the next thing can happen? And I sat down with a blank piece of paper and started drawing. I drew a tree, roots at the bottom, trunk in the middle, canopy at the top. And I started asking, if the canopy is the transformation, if that is what you are designing toward, what has to be true in the trunk for the canopy to exist? And what has to be true in the roots for the trunk to hold? It was backwards design at its core, but it was pointing me towards something that backwards design, even if in its most adaptable form, was not fully accounting for the desire of heart-led leaders and founders to give everything to everyone. I needed a way to help my clients channel those waves into something consumable for their people and manageable for them to design. I needed the prequel. Backwards design gave me the end, the tree gave me the beginning. And the roots to canopy method is what happened when I put those two things together. So backwards design works. The principle is amazing. What I built is not even an attempt to replace. It's an extension. It's an adaptation to my work situation and the situation of my clients. And it accounts for the specific conditions that we find ourselves working in. And I've found that when you do not design from the roots, from where your learner actually is right now, not where you assume they are, you will build a beautiful canopy with nothing holding it up. That is the gap I kept seeing, and that's why the roots matter. So, over the next 3 episodes, we are going to take the roots to canopy method apart piece by piece. Next week is the roots, your learner's current reality, the transformation you are actually promising, and how to design from where they are rather than you wish they were. Then we'll get to the trunk, which is the milestones and their journey, how to sequence learning so it builds on itself instead of collapsing under its own weight. And finally, we get to finish with the canopy where it all comes together, including a metaphor I love about mycelium networks and why every learning experience you build is a tree in a much larger forest. That one is worth waiting for. Now, here is what I need you to do before next week. Not after this episode, not when you get around to it, right now, 60 seconds. Pause this wherever you are and answer one question either out loud or on paper. If you're driving, please just do this out loud. Who is your learner? Not your ideal client avatar, not a demographic profile. I want you to think about a real person, someone you have worked with, or someone you picture when you imagine the person your program is for, and describe where they are right now, not where they want to be, where they are. That is the roots. That is where we are starting next week. And if you do not have an answer to that question yet, that's not a problem. That is exactly why we are having this conversation. And if you are looking for support, get on my newsletter list at reneecoster.com/newsletter and reply to anything I send you because I will read and get back to you. I will see you next week. We are going deep into the roots.